So America's dad, Bernie Sanders, was very, very hesitant to criticize Elizabeth Warren. And Vice News tried to drag it out of him, but it didn't work. Take a look.
The problem for Sanders is that this time, none of these moves are his alone. And there's one candidate who's using his playbook especially well.
You and Senator Elizabeth Warren have a lot of similar positions on issues. Why should someone vote for you over her?
Well, that's a decision that someone is going to have to make. I stand with the working class. Throughout my life, I've taken on Wall Street, the insurance companies, the drug companies, the fossil fuel industry.
She's done a lot of that, too.
Well, that's fine. And people will make their... Elizabeth happens to be a friend of mine. I've known Elizabeth for over 20 years.
But when do you have to stand up and say, my plan about X, Y, and Z is better than hers? I mean, how do you win over these Democratic voters in this primary
we're winning them
process?
over every day. I mean, that's what I do.
So you won't directly criticize any of her policies?
It's not just Elizabeth. That's not what I think. That's not what I do. I mean, there will be a time and a place, obviously, where we'll...
When is that?
But that's a media question.
Yeah, but you're not
No, that's not what the
American
people are not coming up to me. The American people are saying, Bernie, how are you going to implement your Medicare for all single
I've
payer?
heard that somebody did ask you recently, though, what's the difference between you and Elizabeth Warren? Why should I vote for you?
I mean, what people want to know is what I stand for, and people can make that decision.
Now, before I talk about this, I should obviously, let it be known that I don't know if they edited that. So it's possible they edited out little bits here and there where his answer was different. I'm not sure. But if that was his full answer, that wasn't a great answer, man. Now, I get it. I have no doubt in my mind that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, when they met before they both decided to run, they had a conversation. And the end result of that conversation was, I'm not going to attack you, and you don't attack me. And then there also may be a second part to that conversation, which was, okay, what position would you want in my administration? And the other person saying, what position would you want in my administration? So, and I have almost no doubt that's how that conversation went. Hey, I won't attack you, you don't attack me. Deal, deal. Okay, what position do you want in my administration? What position do you want in my administration? That's definitely how that went down. However, there's got to be a couple asterisks in the conversation for when you're asked a direct question. Hey, what's the difference between you and Elizabeth Warren? Because you can answer that question factually without necessarily attacking her. And this is, for the record, something he's done against Biden, too. Like, he's asked, hey, you and Joe Biden, actually, a lot of you guys share the same voters. Or, in other words, when you poll people, oh, who's your number one choice? Biden. Who's your number two? Bernie. Or vice versa. Bernie and then Biden. There are people like that exist, believe it or not. They're people who aren't maybe as deeply involved in the ideological aspect of politics and, it's more surface level. There are people like that exist. And what does Bernie say? Hey, listen, I led the fight against TPP and NAFTA. He was for TPP and NAFTA. I led the fight against the Iraq War. He was for the Iraq War. And he always says, Joe's a friend of mine. I like Joe. And then he'll give you that very dry policy answer. Now, that's talking about the substantive issues without necessarily even attacking him. Maybe it comes across as an attack, but it comes across as an attack because Joe Biden's got a guilty-ass conscience, and everybody knows that those are terrible policies. So he can't get mad at Bernie. What's he going to do? Get mad at Bernie for bringing up basic facts about his record? Hey, maybe you just shouldn't have voted that way. How about that? How about don't vote that way, and then I won't have to give the facts and say that. So, but what I don't understand is why he can't do the same kind of thing with Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren had voted for Donald Trump's massive bloated military budget, which added untold billions of dollars to military spending. Listen, is that a difference between me and her? Yes, I voted against it. She voted for it. She voted for Donald Trump's military budget. What do you want me to tell you? That's a fact. That's what she did. So, I mean, am I attacking her? I don't know. Elizabeth Warren's a friend of mine. You could say that too. Hey, Elizabeth Warren's a friend of mine. I really like her. But there are differences between me and her. For instance, she supported this policy. I did not support that policy. She's proposed her plan on student loan debt, and she doesn't eliminate all of it. I eliminate all of it. Elizabeth Warren has voiced repeatedly that in her mind, while she says she supports Medicare for all, she also says there's 4 or 5 other bills that are wonderful and that have the same goal in mind, which is universal coverage. I don't believe all the other bills have universal coverage in mind. The public option, Medicare for America, Medicare for All Extra, these are not universal coverage plans. These are plans that would protect the status quo in the for-profit health insurance companies. My plan is to go to full Medicare for all. The only private care is supplemental. That's my plan. So there are differences. You could bring up those differences, you know? And again, it doesn't have to be an attack. You could just state the facts, and then some people will perceive it as, oh, that's an attack because he's stating the differences. But the only reason they think it's an attack is because it's a guilty conscience, and they know that Bernie's correct on the issue and Elizabeth Warren is wrong on the issue. You know, ideologically, on paper, Elizabeth Warren agrees a lot more with Bernie Sanders than she does with Hillary Clinton. But she didn't endorse Bernie Sanders in 2016. You know, Tulsi Gabbard did, and stepped down from the DNC as a result of it. So, you know, political courage. Again, you don't have to frame it in this way necessarily, but if you're directly asked the question, hey man, what's the difference between you and Warren? You have to say, there's a difference between me and Warren. You can't act like, oh yeah, well, yeah, leave it up to the people. Yeah, Elizabeth's a friend of mine. Let's not discuss any of that. Why? Because you made a pact to not attack each other? That doesn't mean that if you're asked a direct question, you can't answer in a very simple, straightforward way. There's a way where you talk about things where people know you're attacking them. There's also a way where you talk about things where it's not an attack. It's just a dry statement of the facts, and people might interpret it as an attack, but again, that's just because they have a guilty conscience and they know that you're right and they're wrong. So it's a little frustrating because, Bernie, you gotta make your case, bro. You gotta make your case. You can't just leave it up to everybody to be a fucking political junkie and listen to secular talk, okay? You gotta make your argument and make your case. You could frame it in as nice a way as you want to, but you gotta make your case. Because if you're not telling people there's a difference between me and Warren, then there is going to be a subgroup of people, hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions of people who are like, oh, there's really no difference between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. What do you mean? They're both hardcore lefties, some of the furthest left senators in the country. They're basically fighting for the same thing. So, what do you mean? Yeah, they're basically the same. There are going to be a lot of people with that position. Now, that's not true, but they don't know. You haven't told them it's not true. So I get it. I know you made that pact. For the record, I have no problem with that pact. Some people would be like, oh my God, don't do that. That's, you know, you've gone too far. That's not a good idea. No, I have no problem with two of the better candidates in the race getting together and saying, come on, you and me are cutting a deal here. No problem with that at all. But when you're asked a direct question, you can give a direct answer, and it doesn't have to be an attack. It could just be a dry statement of the facts. And then if they want to respond in kind, if Elizabeth Warren wants to respond in kind, by all means, go ahead and respond in kind. But you can still stay true to that deal that you cut behind closed doors, while also being honest with people. Because in all seriousness, Bernie, that answer was not honest. The idea of like, oh, you know, you didn't give an answer. Hey, what's different between you and Elizabeth Warren? So that's actually, Bernie, you're being dishonest. I know you're sticking true to that deal you had with her behind closed doors, but that's not an honest answer, because there are differences. And you got to tell people what those differences are. You can't just leave it on them to, oh, let me look and let me check. No, say it. It's got to come from the horse's mouth. What's the difference? Tell me. What's the difference? Why should I support you over her? So anyway, that's my breakdown of that. By the way, the rest of that segment was terrible on Vice News. I didn't show you the rest of it, but they do the old, hey, you pay for it. Nonsense on a variety of issues. It's hostile. You could tell it's hostile. But Bernie, you got to relentlessly make your own case, okay? I get it. You made a deal behind closed doors. That's totally fine. But you still have to make your own case, even if it's in a dry, factual way.